to Ghosted, Gagged, and Gay, the podcast where we talk about queer love, messy stories, sad, heartfelt, heartbreak as well, healing, and everything in between. Um, and what it actually takes to really find or build these relationships that truly reflect who we are and truly make us feel safe and secure. And yeah, I'm your relationship coach, Lonay. I help gay men to uncover the limitations that are stopping them from getting the love life they truly want, and to learn how to choose love from self-worth instead of fear. So if you want support, you can always book a call with me. Send me an email or anything like that. But today I'm joined by Kestral Gaian. So welcome, Kestral. I just want to give the listeners a bit of an intro. Kestral is a best-selling author and award-winning writer, working across poetry, fiction, theater, and for screen and radio as well. Their work explores identity, connection, and queer liberation, moving fluidly between the emotional, the political, and the digital. Kestrel's writing is known for balancing softness with defiance and for telling stories that make people feel seen and less alone. Kestrel, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm also very gay and very gagged to be here, so thank you.
That's amazing. Then this show is definitely for you. Yeah, I'm happy that you're here too. So yeah, Kestrel, should we start right away?
Sure, let's go for it.
All right. And there might be some delay because of an internet connection problem, I think. It's probably from my side, but it's okay. So please be patient with us. So yeah, like I actually when I read like your story on your website and so like how like everything you are doing right now. I feel like your work lives at the intersection of identity, connection, and queer liberation. And you write about the quiet moments that reveal something deeper. When it comes to queer love, what do you think we're most afraid of being seen for?
I think that's a really interesting question because fear is something we don't talk about often enough. And I think it's such a generational thing. It's very different for different people depending on where they grew up and what time they grew up in. Um, I can only really share examples from my own lived experience, but thinking about the context I grew up in, right, during the AIDS panic of the 80s and 90s, and Section 28, which was a law, a very anti-gay law here in the UK, cruel headlines in tabloids, the whole culture where queerness was kind of framed as dangerous or shameful or the butt of a joke. And when you grow up seeing that and then go out into the world and have relationships and want to be visible, we all have this desire to be seen. But I think there is a particular fear about being seen in the context of how we grew up, about that kind of internalized worry. Like, I want someone to see me and see that I'm in a queer relationship, but are they going to go away and talk to people behind my back about how weird that is, or how wrong that is, or how much of a freak I am? And I think that fear never leaves us. We talk a good talk, and I think there's a lot to be said for reclaiming slurs against us. That's a really powerful thing to do. But the scars that we pick up as we grow still run really deep. And I think newer generations of queer people now who are kind of growing up and are just just becoming adults, have such a different relationship with that. And I think for them, maybe even the idea of a big grand coming out won't even be a thing because they've been able to just be who they are without having to state it from the start, or at least some people have. So I
Yeah.
think it means different things to different people. But I think there is this fear that is very based in the rejection we feared when we first tried to say who we were, to be ourselves.
Yeah, makes total sense actually. So I think to put it in very simple words, so kind of we're afraid of showing our own scars. And I think our scars make who we are. And if we don't show it to the other person that or the other people we are trying to um, connect with or build a relationship with, then there's always this part of us that we are not showing to these other people. And there's like the closeness, then it has its own limitations, right? Like you cannot be so close unless you really become super vulnerable in front of that person. Um, so I totally agree with you, and that's exactly what I actually work with, like in my coaching. So basically, trying to find, because sometimes scars, like you forget them, right? Like you don't even know that they're there because they're very suppressed deep inside, and then you need somehow like sometimes for some people it's an event that brings it up to the surface, and some other people they really need the help to dig deeper to find these scars and like free themselves, or not free themselves, because scars are there, they make up who we are, right? So we just need to find a way to to be proud of them, to like change our perspective on our own scars. So, Kestrel, a lot of queer connections nowadays start online. So, from apps to DMs to social media and so on. So, what do you think the digital world does to intimacy and really being able to be vulnerable and open? Does it really help us be braver, or does it train us to perform?
So I think it does both of those things. And I think the interesting work is trying to find the edges of that and really put safety and our own kind of psychological and emotional well-being at the core of how we interact and engage with it. I mean, the internet is a space, is a place, just like a dark room or a coffee shop or a bar, and it can mean different things. I think the online world can be really liberating, and it can also be really distorting. Um,
True.
you get the ability as a queer person to have this life saving place to try out different identities and see what fits for you, to try different language, to try out different pronouns, to try out different things, have different conversations, explore yourself in a way that you don't have to announce to the entire world. You still maintain that physical distance and safety. So you get to try something out in a brilliant way. And I think it's kind of beautiful in a way to be able to focus on the who before the what. But then
True.
you get the dating apps and things like that kind of turn intimacy into a bit of a performance. Who has the best photos? Who has the funniest bio? Who has the most imagination? Endless options and a lot less patience. And it's kind of this curated space where everyone's trying to outdo each other. And it feels like a meat market where people are just sort of reduced to bodies and types and roles, hierarchies. And I think there's value in finding connection online, and there's value in finding connection offline. And I think it's all about knowing the limits and the edges of those spaces and what feels safe and what doesn't feel safe. It's about being known, but it's also about being seen, and it's working out the kind of difference between those two things. Um, so I think the healthiest way to answer that question really is about balance. Finding online spaces that can help us find the words, but then at some point we still need to actually go out and find places where our whole selves can kind of breathe and exist.
Yeah, that you put it very beautifully, actually, because there is definitely a difference between being visible and being known. And I think online, then for some people, they think like, oh, we are online, we are out there. But for them, it's not really being out there. It's just really about hiding behind doors. I mean, of course, for some time, this can be helpful, true, to like kind of test the water, see how you feel about things, and yeah, and then like go out in the real world. But I think, yeah, you need to really find this balance, because either way, I mean, like to be honest, like doing it only offline, then I think it doesn't really have a lot of drawbacks. I mean, I guess maybe the drawback would be just putting yourself at the risk of being rejected, and if you cannot handle it very well, then it could really like harm your self-worth. But I mean, online there's also a lot of rejection, right? And in my opinion, it's way worse somehow in certain ways, because they don't know you, they reject you just because your hair looks like that, or your eyes look like that, or something, or like, oh, the shirt you're wearing in the photo is looks weird, and then they judge your whole personality or you as a person based on little details.
And I think there is an accessibility to being online, but it's not the whole story. And you might have someone listening to this who's from a small town and is really remote and isolated, and to them, online is the only way they can meet like-minded people, get to know other queer people, find that validation and suggestion. But that's not all there is. And I think it's okay to have friendships and relationships with people via that medium, but that is not the only medium, and that is not the only way. I've made some fantastic friends on the internet, but almost all of them are people I've eventually arranged to meet up with, or we also talk on the phone or on video calls or whatever. And it's all about making sure that you have the whole experience, I think.
Yeah, you're totally right. Yeah, online can be very beneficial. I mean, for me, when I started out, like I think if there was nothing online, I think it would have become like 10 times more difficult for me to really like explore dating and explore my emotions in that sphere. So online dating really helped me a lot. But yes, to find this balance between like, okay, when does it stop? And then when the real or like in-person meetings should start, this is like where we should be aware of. Even if it's remote, like I mean, in-person meeting or real meeting could be also online, right? Like video calls or something like that. It doesn't have to be really like meeting physically, but at least taking it to the next level of communication or interaction. Yeah, so now that we covered the online dating, so now let's say people are already dating. Now they're dating. So people often then repeat the same story, right? Because this is how our subconscious mind works. We repeat what's familiar from our childhood, with the connections that are surrounding us. And then when we go into dating, then we repeat kind of similar stories, similar patterns. So maybe it's the pattern is chasing unavailable people or staying in situationships for too long or keeping things surface level and not really being able to go like more intimate or on a deeper level. So from a storyteller's perspective, what scripts do you see queer people acting out in love?
I think this is a really interesting question because queer relationships are so often judged against scripts that we didn't write. Like, queer people didn't write the script on
True.
marriage, monogamy, respectability, tidy commitment, clear labels. That is from a world that for a long time we were excluded from quite deliberately. And so I think it's really interesting to think about how things look from the outside versus how they feel from the inside. Um, I'm not sure every repeated pattern is automatically a problem. It's how it feels to the people involved in the relationship, and I say people rather than just person because I think ultimately there is, of course, the how does it feel within you, but when you're in a partnership, there's how does the other person feel within them, and where does that meet? I always avoid using the phrase "you made me feel this" or "you made me feel that" because really, my feelings are mine, my partner's feelings are my partner's feelings, and the beautiful thing is when we come together in the middle of those and say, "Well, here's what I feel, here's what you feel. How do those feelings interact with each other?" And I think some people thrive in relationships that look a bit ambiguous from the outside, particularly from outside the queer community. So some situationships work. Polyamory works for some people and not for others. There's intimacy in chosen family, particularly in the queer community. You can get friendships with romantic edges. And I think the question isn't, does this look conventional or does this look right? Or is this perceived as the right thing to do? But it's, is everyone being honest? Is everyone being kind? Is everyone consenting? And I think if you can answer those things, there's the old phrase, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. And ultimately, relationships need work. They need love. They need to be nurtured like all living and breathing things. A relationship is an entity that needs care and attention. But all different kind of relationships look and feel different, and we shouldn't judge it for how it looks. We should judge it for how it feels to the people that are within that. And of course, pining for someone that isn't available to you is a very, very human thing. We all get that. I mean, unrequited love is painful and it's hard, but it's human and it's still love. And there's a lot of beauty in that love. And I think some of the best lessons I've learned in life were from unrequited love and learning to sit with the love and learn from the pain and not let those things become obsession. And I think that's where those boundaries are with that. I don't think love always needs fixing. I think sometimes it needs a bit more honesty than we give it. Sometimes we need to give space for grief. It's okay to pine for someone and then grieve for the fact that you can't have them. But I think it just needs space. We just need to hold space for things to become what they are without expectation.
Exactly. Yeah, you put it very nicely. And I think these like scripts, as you said, like a lot of scripts we follow, they come from like not our spaces, right? Like they come from very outdated narratives or systems or whatever, like social systems they were like back in the days. And we try to kind of like see how we always like whenever we are in a relationship, I feel like there's always this automatic perspective on like, oh, how do people see us? And then based on that, we move forward with the relationship. And I think that's where we fall into the mistake because we will never be able to fulfill every person's standards or what they think is a good relationship or not. And to always like change dynamics whenever you're interacting with a different kind of person, then it also can be very harmful for the relationship when you care more about the outside than, as you said, like how it feels and just the two people involved in it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So then there comes shame, right? Like in some patterns that we repeat or some scripts or even having this like external perspective when we think of our own relationships, even the relationships with ourselves, then I'm sure like shame shows up a lot, especially that most of us in the queer communities grow up with a lot of suppression. And I think we have this shame. There's some kind of shame that is built in, and it's like part of our lives, basically. And it shows up in queer relationships as well, of course. Um, Even for people who are very out, very confident, they really believe that it's all gone, but there's this kind of hidden, lingering shame. Um, yeah, so what would it be basically? So like, yeah, like the flinch, right? So the editing, the don't be too much rule. So how do you think shame shows up in queer relationships?
But I think there's a huge shame in the there's a shame problem, I think, in queer communities, both internally and in our relationships, as you say. I think it's important to differentiate between like the self-editing that we sometimes have to do for safety and the very kind of shrinking feeling of shame, the minimizing feeling of shame. I mean, the nature of the world that we live in right now is that sometimes we have to read the room. We have to be a bit sensible. We have to protect ourselves when necessary. And sometimes that means not holding hands. Sometimes that means not having a public display of affection. And I wish we lived in a world where we didn't have to do that, but we do. And I 100% support anyone who has to, in a public situation, edit themselves for safety. But if that starts to become the norm, like we can't exist in that place of trying to keep ourselves safe, of hiding from things for too long. Like keep yourself safe and then get out of that situation. That cannot become your normal everyday life. If you live in a place, in a setting where you're with someone where you're constantly feeling shame or you're constantly having to self-edit, it becomes so damaging. Nobody should have to permanently brace themselves, be constantly flinching or trying to translate themselves into something that's more acceptable for the person they're with or the company they're around or the religion they're in, the job they're in, the place they live, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And it almost starts out small. I think shame is such a slippery slope. You know, changing your tone of voice, avoiding tenderness in public, not holding hands, like doing those things every now and then as a kind of mutually agreed safety thing is very different from that then becoming a habit. And then you're making yourself less visible. You're kind of minimizing yourself. And I think the important thing to realize here is that that's not a requirement of being queer. Like the LGBTQ plus community is not a shameful community. Shame is a symptom of the society that makes us feel unsafe, not of us. Shame is not an inherent thing that lives within queer people. It is forced upon us. And I think we shouldn't ever shame someone for protecting themselves, but we need to build lives and relationships where protection isn't the only mode we live in, where we can be liberated, where we can love, where we can thrive free from shame. And even if we can do that 90% of the time, and then every now and then we have to protect ourselves out there in the world, fine. But we absolutely have to really liberate ourselves from these feelings of shame because that they are not from us. That is what society is putting on us, and shame is just another way of keeping us down and taking away our freedom.
Yeah, definitely. And changing your situation or getting out of this environment can be also very tough, right? Especially in certain situations. I had guests coming to the show where they had to leave their families behind, they had to leave their religion behind, even. So it was like
Mm-hmm.
really something deep to the core that they had to give up just to win themselves, because that's what matters at the end, like winning yourself. Um, so like I think so if someone is listening right now and they want deeper love and they want to be who they are, but somehow they're used to this defaulting, this performance. Um, so what would you say is like one small way or concrete way they can practice being more real, like starting from this week even?
I think it's a really big question because those are huge things to grapple with, and it's massive, like you say, getting away from things or trying to move away um, from preconceptions and find deeper, more meaningful love and connections with people. That's huge. The benefits it can have are huge. It feels like an insurmountable thing to do, but it's really any big thing is just lots of little things stitched together.
Exactly.
And I think that reminding yourself of what love really means to you and kind of shedding, letting go of what we think love is supposed to look like is really important because love doesn't look like anyone else's love. Your love could be a totally different shape, a different color, a different size. I mean, asexual and aromantic people still feel love and connection in different ways, and all different types of queer people feel different types of love, and that's brilliant. Something that's always helped me, and a little thing that always helps ground me in kind of connection and love, is to really sit and think. Start with me. I tend to get a piece of paper and a pen, and I'll write down things that I really love about myself to start out with, because that self love is the most important sort of love that you can deeply connect with. But what I then like to do is think about the people in my life that I would also use those same words for, whether they're a romantic partner, a friend, anyone that I know in my life. If those are positive traits I see in me, who do I know that I see those same traits in? That's a connection. That's something we have in common. And this may not be someone that I want to have a romantic relationship with or a physical relationship with, but realizing that I have that connection and that thing in common is powerful. And I think, a challenge, I suppose, to anyone listening that does that is, if you've got someone who there's something you really love about yourself, and then there's someone and they have the same trait that you really love about yourself in them, just drop them a text and say you were thinking of them. Because that opening that door, that's how you let in connection and how you make those connections, whether that's someone, whatever kind of love that is, whatever kind of connection that is. Opening that door when you see that similarity is a really powerful thing to do.
Wow, I actually got goosebumps. It's really powerful. I think just having this awareness of like the things that you love about yourself and then this connection to the people that are already in your life is like it can be very powerful, lifting yourself up and a very powerful step towards really living your true self. And uh, it's also a nice way to see like what kind of environment I'm surrounding myself with, right? Like, are the people around me share these traits? Or I mean, they don't have to share the same traits, but are they like when you already start thinking like, okay, like what people or who I'm sharing this trait with, then you already start like analyzing the traits of the people you're surrounded by. So I think this is also can be
Mm.
very powerful to assess the environment you're currently living in. Yeah, so Kestral, do you want to play a mini game? I started
I'd be
with
very
this.
happy to.
I started this game last episode. It's called Keep, Cut, and Rewrite. Or rewrite, sorry. And I'll give you like a dating sentence people say. It's one of like it's very very common sentences, and you tell me to either keep it, cut it, or rewrite it into something healthier.
Okay.
So the first one would be I'm chill, I don't need much. What do you think?
Mm. Rewrite it.
How would
I'm
you say?
chill. I'd say I'm chill and I know how to meet my own needs.
Wow, that's actually quite nice. Yeah, like
Because
we all use
saying I
this,
don't
right?
need much is really minimizing, but saying no, I've got needs. I'm just they're met. Thanks. I'm chill.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, that's really nice. The second one would be let's just see where it goes.
Cut.
Cut. I
Yeah,
yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say I think it's asking. Instead I would rather ask someone. Okay, well, what would you like? What boundaries do you have on that? Like, because let's see where it goes means different things to different people, and it's such an open ended, non committing statement.
Yeah, that's true. Like especially if the other person is looking for something more like committed, then they could also see this as like, okay, yeah, like they want something eventually, but for now they want to take it slow. But maybe for the person who said it, it means like, oh, this will never go somewhere serious. It
Yeah,
could,
exactly.
yeah, that's
Too many
true.
different meanings.
Yeah, exactly. It's very vague. Third one would be I don't want labels.
I think that's valid. I think keep it. It's someone stating their point. I mean, there are follow up questions. What does labels mean to them? Why are they saying that?
Yes.
But it's a valid statement.
Yeah, that's true. From my perspective, I would say it really depends on the context. I think the context here is
Mm.
missing because like if it just means like this person doesn't really want to commit, that's why they're afraid of labels, then it
Oh
can
yeah,
be
then
like
that's a
that's a
deeper issue.
cut.
But that's not what it's about. I think it's a valid statement, but it's all about the context.
Exactly, yeah. But if it's just about they don't want to fit into a certain box and they want to find their own box, then it's very valid. You're right.
Mm.
I'm bad at texting.
I think keep. That's someone actually stating communication preferences. I'd maybe hope they'd follow it up with, but here's how I like to talk. But I
Yes.
think, perfectly valid if someone's saying, you know what, I'm not good with texting, they're being honest.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. It's also here context is also could be missing. Um, yeah, this one is when like it's either I am too much or you say to another person you're too intense.
Or cut, absolutely cut. Um, because you can't tell someone else how they are and who they are. You could say, I am finding you intense.
Hmm.
And that is someone saying, here is my reaction right now. This is what's sitting in me.
Okay.
But for me to say you are too intense, that's me saying that how I perceive you is how everyone perceives you. That's me saying how I see you is reality. Whereas actually, that's just how I see you. So I think it would be okay to say, hey, I'm finding you intense, and then have a conversation about it. But I don't think you can ever tell anyone you're too intense.
Yeah, that's true. Or saying it to yourself like I'm too much or something like that can also be very harmful to self-worth.
It's very damaging. Cut that. No negative self talk.
Yeah,
Let's build ourselves up.
I always say like whenever you're speaking to yourself, imagine you're speaking to your best friend. If you
Mm,
can say this, whatever you want to say to your best friend, then you can say it to yourself.
100%.
So, Kestrel, before we end the episode, can you tell us like what you're doing right now, what you're working on, what's your latest project?
Sure, I'd be really happy to. I love writing stories, and all of my stories are about connection with people. So sometimes it's romantic, sometimes it's platonic, sometimes it's connecting with a past version of yourself from another reality 800 years in the past. But it's all about connection. And at the moment, I'm in the process of writing the second book in a series. And what's
Ooh.
so beautiful about that is I'm dealing with all of the stuff that happened in book one and introducing new people and working out how to put those threads of connection through it and make sure that the characters are feeling seen and heard, but also that it's kind of relatable to the reader as well.
Oh wow, that sounds actually quite interesting. And like, is there a timeline where you think like this second book will be published?
Yes, my publisher would be very mad at me if I said there was no deadline because I've definitely got one of those. The first book in the series, which is like a queer sci-fi fantasy book, it's called The Boy from Elsewhere, and that came out in February 2026.
Hmm.
The second book is coming out exactly 1 year later in February
Oh,
2027. So right now it's right in the middle of busy work for me, but as we get closer to the new book launching, it's going to be quite an interesting journey, I think.
amazing. Yeah, then I will be looking forward actually to seeing that. And I want to read your first book. So where can we find your book? So like I have your website, it's there. But are there like on which platforms it is available?
Anywhere you can get books, you can find this one. It's in bookshops. It's on places like Amazon or Apple Books and Google Books. There's an audio book of it as well. You can get on Audible or on Apple or Google or I think Spotify even.
Wow.
So it's everywhere. Feel free to just search up my name or the title of the book. I think there are some links from my website as well, so it's fairly easy to find, I think.
Okay, then I'll put your like your website link in the episode description, and so
Thank
people
you.
can find your books and see what you're working on next. So yeah, thank you, Kestrel. And before we close, really close right now, what's one sentence you wish every queer person could believe about love and belonging?
Love takes any shape it wants to, but the most important thing is loving who you are and the shape of the love that sits within you.
Wow, really, like this conversation is giving me goosebumps all the time. I can totally hear that I'm talking with a writer because you really know how to use your how to choose like the right words and expressions. So I'm really happy that you were here and thank you so much for what you said is going. And I think what you said is going to land for people who feel like they're always editing themselves, who always feel like they need to kind of be someone else or don't know how to be themselves. So yeah, thank you again so much also for your honesty and your openness. I think that really shows that the books that you're publishing will have this element in them, this like honesty, this like raw value or raw knowledge to people who really want to kind of have a direct advice, not just fluffing around basically. So yeah, if you want to check out Kestrel's work, you can find them. It's at kester.al, right? So
That's the
Kestral.
website. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the website.
And my Instagram is just kes.tr.al. So it's all everyone online
Right.
is just my name with various different dots in, depending on where you find it.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So thank you again. And yeah, if you want to hear more stories, if you want to share your own story, please book a call or a slot to be on Ghosted, Gagged, and Gay. And I would be happy, and others would be happy also to hear your story, no matter how simple, how small, how big, how funny, how sad it is. I think all stories are worth hearing. And yeah, thank you, Kestrel, again for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been really fun. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Then bye bye.